We want to welcome you to the celebration of life for Bill Keeny. Your attendance is greatly appreciated as we honor this remarkable individual. I first met Bill Keeny when I was writing sports for the North Penn Reporter when I was a student. I was covering a baseball game in 1967. Not many people realize that Coach Keeny was a very good baseball coach also. He coached 6 years, and I believe it was, I get the years mixed up, 1972 he went into service and Walt Schmidt took over the team. And his final year, 1967, they were co-winners of the Bux-Mont Championship. And Bill then stopped coaching baseball, and he's active in administration for the new high school in 1968. I always called him coach since that first meeting. I called him coach in the interview, and I've called him coach for over 50 years, and he's a remarkable individual. I respected him for many things, especially his integrity. When I asked Bill about individuals, he would go like this: wet his finger and put his finger up in the air. That meant that individual went wherever the wind blew. Bill didn't respect those kind of individuals. Bill had a very solid, fundamental belief in things, and he had high integrity, which was very important. The other thing about Bill, he was willing to discuss issues in great depth. He always went to lengths to make a point. I talked to someone about Bill, and he said if you ask Coach what time it is, he will tell you how to build a clock. So it was kind of an explanation of Bill's explaining things. We are grateful for the individuals who are sharing their perspectives of coaching, and we'll begin with his high school players. Our first speaker is Kevin Fox. Dr. Kevin Fox graduated from Upper Perk in 1973 as a first-team All-Bux-Mont offense and defense selection. He is also a member of the Upper Perkiomen Academic Hall of Fame. Kevin graduated from Princeton in 1977 and played offensive line for 4 years, was an Ivy League scholar athlete, and was named National Football Foundation Academic All-American in 1976. Kevin graduated from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in 1981 and is a professor of medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, where he has worked for 35 years. Welcome, Kevin Fox.
Thank you, Ms. Bonekemper. I want to thank the Keeny family for this privilege. It's a great honor to be able to be up here. Now, I suppose I represent the early 1970s in the saga of William Keeny. But before I get there, I would like to work my way through my own version of the 1960s. It would be the children's version, because I don't think I could pay proper tribute to Coach Keeny unless I did that, so bear with me. It won't take that long. I met William Keeny in the summer of 1962. It's not correct. I first bore witness to William Keeny in the summer of 1962. I had just turned 7 years old. It seemed to me that summer that adults were talking more and more about football and the football coach, the football team, and they were saying things like, they might be pretty good this year. One hot morning in August, my father took me to see football practice. I think he thought it might be fun. Now, on that particular day, practice was being held down in that pit, that depression in the ground that ran along 6th Street, north of the track in East Greenville. If you were a spectator, you would stand on the edge of the pit and look down at the activities that were going on below. Now, I knew nothing about the game of football at that point. I'd never been to a game, much less a practice. But what I saw that morning in August of 1962 is so vividly etched in my head that it could have occurred last week. I saw a large group of young men. They were wearing white practice uniforms and blue helmets. They had no numbers on them. They all looked very hot and tired. Some of them were extremely dirty. They would line up across from one another. The quarterback, he was wearing a red vest. I did not know why. Would call signals. He would take a snap, hand the ball to somebody else. There would result a violent collision, and then a pile would form. And it would raise a cloud of dirt up into the sky, and then a whistle would blow, and this man would run toward the pile and start yelling really loud. He would yell criticism. He would yell sharp criticism. He would sometimes yell encouragement. Much of the time I could not tell the difference. But I can tell you this. A 7-year-old boy will only react one of two ways to such a spectacle. He might run away, horrified, go home, find his mother, and beg her to sign him up as quickly as possible for trombone lessons. Or he'll stay, and he'll watch for a while, and he'll think to himself, I might like to try this someday. Well, that's the way it was for a whole generation of boys in the Upper Perkiomen Valley in the 1960s. Suddenly there was something to do on Saturday afternoons in East Greenville. There were big crowds of people. There were games. There was music. There were cheerleaders. And then there were victories. And then there were more victories. And there were even little parades. Some Friday nights and some Saturday afternoons, there'd be these road trips to these exotic places in that mysterious region my parents referred to as the suburbs. Towns like Hatboro and Springfield and Ambler and Willow Grove. They had wide streets, they had lots of traffic lights, they had fast food restaurants, big houses, there were no farms, and they had fancy new high schools. Week after week, we'd subject them all to a good beating, and I'd come home happy. To a little kid, it was ecstasy. Thanksgiving Day, 1963, 8 years old, standing alone against a rope in the north end zone in East Greenville. One little member of a crowd of people the likes of which this valley hasn't seen in 56 years. I was surrounded by people wearing red and white. I identified them as the enemy. Did not move a muscle for 4 quarters. Was not going to give up my place. Not to those people. Watched our team not just beat, but annihilate its opponent for its share of the league title. What a day. What a day. From that moment, a legend was born. A legacy was created. And for many of us, no matter what our shortcomings might have been, there was no option of turning back. Year after year, Coach Keeny and his revered coaching staff would cobble together from this small high school really good football teams. These were teams that comprised some players of extraordinary talent. They're here today: Bill Gebbert, Steve Moyer, Denny Kleinbach, Keith Kleinbach. Remarkable players, and there were more. But mostly it seemed to me as a kid they were just the regular guys that had gotten his message that was the simple, straightforward message that makes sports great. Work hard, learn to sacrifice, learn to discipline yourself to get better at something. Do these things and you will learn respect. Respect for yourself, respect for your team, your teammates, your coach, respect above all else for the game, because it's a wonderful game, and it's only worthy of your very best effort. 1966, and this is still remarkable, this same school fielded a team, and I'm sorry if you're going to hear this again, 11 guys on offense, 11 different guys on defense with players to spare, and they won themselves a league title. 1969 came this close to doing it again. It was, and it will always remain, remarkable. Now, our turn came in the early 1970s. Our talents, by comparison, were meager. Our successes, as a result, were fewer. But I think a mark of a great coach is what does he do during the lean times? And they were pretty lean for a while. Well, from where we were standing, the message never changed. Work hard, sacrifice, discipline yourself so you can get better at this. Do this and you will learn respect for yourself and your team and your teammates and the coach, and respect the game. Believe this message and you will get better. And we did. But there had to have been moments when Coach Keeny must have asked himself, why? Why, after a decade of hard work and success and sacrifice, did I end up with these guys? Well, if he had moments like that, I never saw them. When I was 15 years old, he came to my house in the middle of the season in 1970. It was an abysmal season. I'd gotten sick. I was laid out for a week and a half. I was a mess. I thought I was going to die. I wasn't. He came to my house, he brought me books, inspirational books, written, of course, by football players, books that were simply designed to get me out of my funk, relieve me of my imaginary despair. And you know what? It worked. What greater gift can a coach give a screwed-up teenager than the simple knowledge that he cares about him? First week of school, 1971, sitting over in that library. It was a study hall. I was not studying. I was talking to a girl. I didn't do that very often. It's a nice girl, too, one in whom I had more than a passing interest. As fate would have it, Coach Keeny spotted me sitting there, and he ushered me, as you might figure, down to the locker room so he could show me the films of the scrimmage that had taken place the previous Saturday. As he flipped on the projector, he said to me, as only he could say, and you can all hear him saying this, "Fox, our tight end blocking was putrid." I was the tight end. And I did not know what the word putrid meant, but I suspected it was not good. I learned a lot that morning. I learned about the deficiencies of my play, which were considerable. I learned a new word. And it was a long time before I talked to that girl again. But the greatest gift that Coach Keeny gave me, that gave to many in this room, was a simple product of his fierce commitment to higher education. And football is a means of achieving that goal. The formula was not complicated. Colleges had football teams. Good colleges had football teams. You want to go to college? Then commit yourself to playing football, and you might just get yourself into a good one. So with his help and with his encouragement, it's what I got to do. I was able to attend a school that would otherwise have been completely out of reach. Played there for 4 years, enjoyed every minute of it. But the truth of the matter is, I never enjoyed playing there as much as I enjoyed playing here. Even during the leanest of times, there was always something special about this place, this legacy, this man, these men. I suspect no one in this room remembers much of anything about the team that played in the fall of 1972. There's no reason that you should. We won no championship. We set no records. Before the season started, those of us who were playing for the final time had experienced the thrill of victory 3 times in the previous 2 seasons. We finished that season 4th in the league, had a league record of 5 wins, 3 losses, and a tie. But when we walked off the field on Thanksgiving Day in 1972, having played for the final time and having beaten our opponent decisively, the way we looked and the way we acted would have led you to believe we'd won the Rose Bowl. It was a moment so thick with joy and emotion and a sense of redemption that it almost makes me sad to think how few boys will experience that when they're 17 years old. To most of the people that were there that day, the cosmic significance of that victory had vanished before Thanksgiving dinner was even served that afternoon. But for those of us who played, it can never go away. Nearly half a century has gone by since that day, and I can still feel it. It was like it was yesterday. How do you pay a debt to a man for the gift of a college education? How do you pay a debt to a man for a gift of a moment like that? You can't. In the end, there are some debts you can never repay, no matter how hard you try. William Keeny left this earth with hundreds of men in debt to him for a whole variety of reasons. I like to think he was okay with that, because I think he knew that we were all out there trying to pay him back a little bit at a time, every day of our lives, each man in his own way. So thank you, Coach Keeny, for that precious moment. Thank you, Coach Keeny, for a proper college education. Thank you for everything. Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker, under the player's perspective, flew all the way from California to be here today, Dennis Kleinbach. Denny was a first-team All-Bux-Mont end in 1963 and repeated as unanimous choice of coaches and sports writers in 1964. He was named first-team All-Suburban Philadelphia and All-State Honorable Mention in 1964. Denny played football as a tight end for Ben Schwartzlander at Syracuse University from 1964 to 1967 and starred as a junior and a senior. He blocked for starting running backs such as Pro Football Hall of Famers Floyd Little and Larry Zonka and ex-New York Giants coach Tom Coughlin. Then he played in the 1967 Gator Bowl, where the Orangemen, off to a slow start, lost to Tennessee 18-12. Little rushed for 216 yards and a touchdown, while Zonka tallied 114 yards and a touchdown. Please welcome Denny Kleinbach.
It's a great honor to be here today, and especially a great honor to thank the Keenys for all they've done, Shirley, the kids, Dave, Biz, and Lynn, for all the time that Bill spent with us and not with them, teaching us the basics of football, the basics of how to succeed, from the skill set that we needed, the determination that we needed, the passion, the pride, and for everything else, the determination that they wanted to win. Not just a little, but win a lot. It was, of course, we had, there were some fun times, there were some not so good times, but eventually, because he taught us the basics and kept after us, and sometimes, yes, he had to adjust our attitude a little, with a little face mask shake or a little kick in the butt. And Dave Keeny told me that just a couple weeks ago that he got kicked in the butt. Well, Dave, you're not alone, or you weren't alone. There's a long line, and I got my butt kicked too. But what Bill Keeny did for me, and for all of us really, was he set in motion, he wanted to know, he taught us the intangibles that we could take on later in life. Specifically, did we know our position? Did we know what the play was? Could we carry out that play, number 2? Number 3, were we for the team? Were we a team player? And number 4, were we a loser or were we a winner? In his mind, if you're a loser, he had no time for you. A loser he defined as someone who got knocked down, laid in the grass, thought, oh, poor me, this shouldn't have happened to me. But a winner would jump back up and go to the man who just knocked him down and say, you come my way again, and I'm going to knock you up into the trombone section. And that was Bill Keeny, and that's how we learned to play football. He also wanted to know is if we had set personal goals for ourselves. That is, did we want to just be a regular player, or do we want to be a much better player? Do we want to continue off with football in a higher level, or did we just want to be a backyard player? And did you support team goals? Were you willing to do whatever it took to make the team successful? The other thing that I took from Bill Keeny, which really drove my life, was he asked us just once or twice to set our goals, but then to reach out higher than we thought we could ever reach. The purpose of that was we all have the ability to be better than we think we can be. We all have the ability to stretch out and be whatever it is we want to be if we commit ourselves to that. And so when we went out into the real world after high school or college, what did our employers want to know? They wanted to know, did we know our job? Just like in football, do we know what we're supposed to do in the next play? The second point was, could we carry that play out every single time? That is, not only know what we're supposed to do, but actually do what we're supposed to do. The third point was, are we a team player? Do we help everybody else out? Do we want to succeed? Do we want to win? Do we want to be the pride of the Upper Perkiomen community, which was so important to him? And we have to thank Bill Keeny for bringing back the spirit of the Upper Perkiomen community, to the Upper Perkiomen community. After being the doormats of the Bux-Mont for many, many years, with seasons of 0-10 or 1-9, I know my father took us to games when I was in second grade. It was terrible to see us lose all those games with maybe 30 or 50 people in the crowd. And the last point, which I took off, was the fact that reach out, get these goals so high that you will go further than you think you can. And exactly that's what happened going out into companies. So my choice, my life, I went to visit a friend as a lark. I was going to get my European trip out of my system just after I finished grad school. And one day I sat down and wrote, what do I want to do with my life? And I wrote down 6 things. I wanted to be a head finance guy of a company because that was my background. I wanted to work in as many countries as I could and visit as many countries as I could, just because they were out there and I hadn't seen very much of the world. And who lives in Green Lane and wants to go out and look around the world? Well, that was me. The other point was I wanted to learn a new sport. We couldn't play football all our lives. And then I wanted to know, is it the best place here in America to live by visiting these different countries and so forth? And where did I really want to live? And what is the how to adapt to living in a different country, in a different language, in a different culture, with different cuisine and everything. To me, that drove me on. By luck, I have visited a friend, and 4 months turned into 23 years in Europe. I lived in 4 countries. I lived in London, Paris, Amsterdam, and 2 places in Wiesbaden in Germany, including Munich. And I traveled the world with an oil field company from France, and I got to work in 35 countries, visit 50, and those numbers did not include, they were in Africa, the Middle East, the Far East, all over Western Europe. I was blessed. I kept raising my hand, just like Bill Keeny told us. Volunteer, don't be afraid, get out there. Don't be afraid to get your backside kicked. You got to do something. So I kept volunteering, and that's how I got to be in so many different countries. And the 35 countries that I worked in, the 50 countries that I visited, did not include Canada, the United States, or the strangest place I've ever been, the People's Democratic Republic of California. I live there now, so I can make a joke about it. The people are really, really nice, but the politicians have really done a poor job with the state. So with this, I was able to go out and do a lot more things and raise up. I did become a CFO of a very, very large company, a robotic storage company, $200 million. Later on, I was also the CFO of a number of companies out in Silicon Valley. The big thing was, for me, just listening to what Bill said, reaching out and being better than I thought I could be. There's one other point I'd like to make, and that is the things that we carried not only professionally out, but carried from sport to sport. In 1964-65, we had a championship basketball season. Coach Ruby and Coach Mike Duca trained us very well. We were a great defensive team, but not a great offensive team. Somehow we won the league championship, went on to defeat 2 teams. One included a guy at Springfield, Delaware County. We played again, down in Yardley. 1,300 people took a bus or a car to go see us play. We were all small kids relative to the team we were playing. We should not have been on the court, but we didn't know it. Our heart said that we could win, and we won in the last second. It was amazing. And then went on, we got lucky, went on to the Penn Palestra. How many people in their lives get to play in the very famous Penn Palestra? Very few. We went there. Unfortunately, we ran into the state champs, or the eventual state champs, and we did lose. At the end of that game, that is, the Chester team received a round of applause from their fans. And we got a standing ovation from the 2,000 fans from the Upper Perkiomen Valley who came out to see us, who we made proud by how we played. But who were we on this team? Our starting small forward was our quarterback, Stan Graber, 2-time all Bux-Mont. The other co-captain was myself, 2-time all Bux-Mont. The third was Keith Kleinbach at center. He became all Bux-Mont. The fourth was Rusty Engel, who ran Rusty's locker. And he was a 2-way starter at safety and wide receiver. He also made it, all Bux-Mont. And Jimmy Young, a small, tough little guard. But there was also 3 other guys on the squad. Steve Reeder, Rich Butterwick, and Bill Geppert. All 3 who also went on to play and make the all Bux-Mont team. My point is, 7 guys out of that team went on to play to become all Bux-Mont players. We were football players. We did well with basketball, but we weren't really basketball players. The point is, from all those 7 guys and that championship team, how many people made the all Bux-Mont basketball team that year? None. None of us. 3 honorable mentions and 1 second team. And so, my point is that what Bill gave us, Bill altered the DNA of the guys on that team. We did not know how to quit. Even in the direst moments when We had games where we were behind by 5 points with less than a minute left. We went out and intercepted five passes, inbound passes, and won the game going away. So Bill helped us, not only in that, but later in life, and also with our selection and later in life. So tonight, when we all go to bed, I ask that we all say some kind words for Bill Keeny. And for the players, I ask you all to thank him for turning us boys into men. Thank you very much.
I can relate to Denny's statements about Coach Keeny's knowledge of football. One night I was over at Penn Ridge, I think they were playing Souderton, and I was standing in the back row of Coach Keeny, and he would say, they're going to run up the middle. The play goes off, they run up the middle. He said, now they're going around the end. Next play, they go around the end. Now they're going to throw to the tight end. Then they threw to the tight end. I said, this doesn't seem fair. He knows what the other teams are doing. But he scouted the team so well that he knew from the formations and the patterns, what was going to develop next. And I think, as Denny said, that was certainly a big asset in the Upper Perk football winning their games. Our next guest is Steve Moyer. Steve was a running back on the 1966 Upper Perkiomen High School Bux-Mont Championship team and all Bux-Mont first team selection, and played in the first Montgomery County All-Star football game. I think he went on to coach that game one year, Steve. Steve became the University of Pittsburgh's all-time receiver in 1971. One of his top fans was Upper Perkiomen School District Dr. Donald Thompson, who attended many Panther games. Steve coached Upper Perkiomen to a Pac-10 co-championship in 1977 and has coached football for the last 47 years. He was a true disciple of Coach Keeny and a close friend of his for many years. Steve Moyer.
Thanks, George. It's great to be here today, but at the same time, it's sad to be here today. It's times like this make you reflect and think about the important people and events that make your life what they are. A major event in my life happened on October 10th, 1958. I was only 8 years old. And little did I know that an event was occurring that would change my life. On that date, my family moved from Cherry Street in East Greenville to Montgomery Street in Pennsburg. It was a new development, the street wasn't even paved yet. That doesn't sound like something earth-shattering, but a few years later, a young couple moved in across the street that changed everything. They were Bill and Shirley Keeny. Little did I know that that young man would become more than a neighbor. He would also become my coach, my mentor, my teaching and coaching colleague, and even my tax preparer. Montgomery Street was a great place to grow up. We had an open area at one end of the street where we played football and baseball, and Beeler's driveway at the other end of the street was a neighborhood basketball court. Even Mr. Keeny occasionally stopped by to play some basketball. This new neighbor had just taken over a major job as the head football coach at Upper Perk. What a challenge. I remember going to see Upper Perk football in the late 50s, and it was bad. As a kid, I loved going to the games because I just loved sports, but Upper Perk just wasn't very good. To give you an idea, 1955, Upper Perk was 2-7-1, 56, 0-9-1, 57, 1-8, 58, 1-7-2, 59, 0-10. From 55 through 59, Upper Perk had only 4 wins. They were 4-41-4. Coach Keeny's first year was 1960, and Upper Perk was 0-10. In later years, talking to him, there was one game that always stood out from that season, and that was Central Bucks. At halftime of the Central Bucks game, over the loudspeaker, the announcer said, "The Rinky Dinks can now go to the locker room." That announcement lived with Coach Keeny forever. Upper Perk lost that game 71-6. But Coach knew that to compete in the Bux-Mont League against teams like North Penn and Central Bucks and Penn Ridge and Souderton and Quakertown, you couldn't just pound the ball at your opponent. You had to be innovative. You had to throw the ball, not just pound it. We were the smallest team in the league, so we had to find a better way. And that's what Coach Keeny did. In year 2, which was 1961, Upper Perk was 4-4-2. That's as many wins as Upper Perk had in the last 6 years combined. Year 3, 1962, Upper Perk was 7-3. Something was happening. Coach's innovative style was the talk of the league. The Keeny men, as we were often called, were something special. That magic blue sweater that he wore on the sideline became a special symbol. And then there was 1963. What a magic year. That Souderton game was a game for the ages. I was in 8th grade at the time. I had a paper route to run that morning, and as soon as I was done, I began walking to the high school. That must have been around 7:30 in the morning. I was going to save seats for my family. Fortunately, soon after I started walking down Penn Street, a car stopped and asked if I wanted a ride. It was Mr. Keeny. He dropped me off at the front of the school. I was in shock. The line on the 5th Street side wrapped from the gate to the parking lot all the way to the front of the school. The line on the gym side also wrapped around to the front of the school, and they weren't even selling tickets yet. Fortunately, I got good seats, and man, what a game. Victory over Souderton and a championship. 1964 was another great year, 8-2. I was a freshman, and you guys of the early 60s, along with Coach Keeny, were my heroes. Coach Keeny had Upper Perk on the map, and the school and the community were all excited. In 1965, I was a sophomore, and we were 6-4. Then came 1966. What a great season. Going into the season, we had no idea how good we would be. We knew that we'd be tough because Coach Keeny's teams all were. But how good would we be? We had no idea. It developed into a great season, and those last 2 games with Hatboro and Souderton were just unbelievable. And then the spontaneous parade down Main Street sent a chill down our spines. What Coach Keeny had done in such a short time was remarkable. The smallest team in the league was beating the Giants. From 61 to 66, Upper Perk was 41-15-2 and won 2 championships. The Keeny men were for real. Because of what Coach Keeny had done at Upper Perk and how he challenged us to perform in the classroom as well, many of us got opportunities to play football beyond high school. Personally, I never expected to be playing college football at the Division I level, but the Keeny program made it happen as I went on to play at the University of Pittsburgh. The Keeny program had me well prepared to play Division I football. I knew the game because Mr. Keeny made sure we were prepared. 2-a-day practices were no harder than they had been in high school. The drills were very similar. The X's and O's I felt prepared for. My connection with Mr. Keeny didn't stop once I graduated from college. As I prepared to go into the coaching profession, Mr. Keeny was still there. My first job was at Freedom High School in Bethlehem with a fellow Upper Perk grad, Bill Mall. The connection was made through Mr. Keeny. And 47 years later, I'm still coaching. I even got a chance with Coach Keeny, to coach with Coach Keeny at Kutztown University on Dave's staff. Talking football with Coach Keeny was always a pleasure. In his retirement, Coach Keeny set up a tax service. He helped many teachers and friends with tax preparation. I'd always get a chance to talk football and life with Mr. Keeny every year when he did my taxes. A half-hour return would take usually about 3 hours. I got to sit down with Coach for my taxes this year, and we had a good talk. A few days later, he was in the hospital, and I got a chance to sit down and talk with him at Grandview Hospital. His biggest concern was his family and grandchildren, and especially he was concerned about his beloved Shirley. Coach Keeny, the band from Pottsville was a blessing to Upper Perkiomen High School, the Upper Perkiomen community, and Upper Perkiomen football. In closing, I just want to say, Coach, I'll miss you. And from Bob my heart, thanks for everything.
Now, next in the player's perspective, we're going to have a dynamic duo of Fran Schwank and Bob Whitman. Fran Schwank will be entering his 50th year of coaching football this fall at St. Mary's University in Leavenworth, Kansas. Fran graduated from Upper Perk in 1965 and was named All-Bux-Mont First Team. The Indians finished with an impressive 9-2 record after winning the league in the previous year. Fran earned a Bachelor of Science and a Master's degree in Education and was a 4-year letterman at Northwest Missouri State. His coaching experience included 5 years at Missouri Western, as well as head coaching stints at Doane College for 31 years and William Jewell for 5 years. Coach Schwank developed 36 All-American athletes and 96 academic All-American athletes. He was named NAIA Division II Coach of the Year, had 5 teams in the NAIA playoffs, and he served as president of the NAIA Football Association from 2002 to 2005. Bob Whitman, notice that's Whitman, W-I-T-M-A-N. He doesn't have a chocolate company. Bob Whitman graduated from Upper Perkiomen High School in 1968 and was the first team All-Bux-Mont selection. He graduated from Northwest Missouri State in 1973 with all MIAA honors. Bob started coaching Upper Perk in 1973 and became a graduate assistant at Northwest Missouri State in 1974. He earned a master's degree from Northwest Missouri in 1977. Bob was a head football coach for the next 39 years and also frequently served as a strength and conditioning coach and as a track coach. He was successful at Green Hill School in Dallas, Texas with a 48-30-1 record. However, his highlight in coaching was at Charlotte, North Carolina Country Day School, where he posted a 219-67 record with 8 state championships. Fran and Bob.
Oh, what an honor. Can you guys hear me okay? I talk very, very low. I sound like Coach Walt Schmidt sometimes, and get pretty loud sometimes also. But what an honor. Keeny family, we love you dearly. I know a lot of us wouldn't be where we are today, or wouldn't accomplish what we have in our careers. We are up here together because we're representing a group basically from the Upper Perkiomen Valley and high school that attended Northwest Missouri State in Maryville, Missouri. Coach Keeny definitely had all the backing behind us on that, although I would like to recognize Mr. Jim Mullen. He did a great job working with Coach Keeny, and we really, really worked quite a group to go out there. There's some of you here today, but Rusty Angle was one of the first ones to follow me out, and I think his name was mentioned earlier on the basketball team. He played a year of basketball out there. And then Bob Whitman, Bob Indy, Tony Bono, some of these names you might know, Mike Buck, Mike's here today, Mark Oschlecker. Bruce Wall was out there as a baseball manager, was a band in the band here, instrumental in the band here, and it came out as a baseball manager, and he recruited Don Jacobs. Don came out and played baseball at Northwest Missouri State. We also had Larry Schlupp, was a pole vaulter out there, and we somehow managed to encourage Elaine McLean to come out also. So one girl came out, and at that time there wasn't the women athletics that there is today, and it was just great having that group. There's probably a group of 10 or 11, I believe I just mentioned, that were out there, and it all comes back to this community, this school, and the support that we've had from Coach Keeny and the staff. And I'd like to recognize the staff. It's the first time I've seen Coach Duca and Coach Schmidt in a long time, and it's just so good seeing them. They're so instrumental, part of that staff. Coach Werkheiser, just so good seeing him. I saw Mr. Slimmer today, the late Phil Jones. I had heard that he had passed on us, and Tom O'Connor and Coach Olson. All those were so instrumental. And then Coach Keeny was such a good man, such a great leader. Not only a leader of us as athletes, but a leader of his staff, and staff did such a great job. I can sum it up by saying that, you know, it was the little things. You do the little things the right way. And all the years that I've coached, I'll start my 50th season next year, and I've coached all my teams like that, and basically off what we learned here from Coach Keeny and the staff. And it's the little things, like he always said, and I'll throw this out, and I'm sure some of you guys, I know Denny will remember this, and he always said, the officials will never beat you. They'll make it hard on you, but they'll never beat you, you know, and things like that are just so structured. He always said it takes more of a man to walk away from the field than it does to fight one, and I preached that to our teams over the years, that you do the little things and you do them right. He was phenomenal in his language. We do not swear or cuss. I mean, that goes on constantly in today's world, and I know if he had this analogy back then, he'd have used it. The only word that I know that starts with F and ends with CK is fire truck, you know, and I know that Coach would have been the first one to say this is the way it's going to be, and we would have followed it to a T. Just the little things, again, talking to you former players out there, the helmets on the field, we never, ever set our helmet down on the field, let alone sit on it. Oh, that was sure death, I'll tell you. and you can all remember that bank that we would run, you know, because of it. So, and the old analogy that, and I learned it when I was an 8th grader, we'd come up on Saturday mornings in practice, and it's when the going gets tough, the tough get going. It's just all things like that are just so basic, but so true in today's life, on the field and off the field. And I'll never forget our pregame ritual. And that was the Lord's Prayer. And as soon as we were done, he'd always say, "Captains, you got 2 minutes." And he'd leave the room along with the rest of the staff. And that's when we'd put it together as a team and go out and play for this community. And it's just been a blessing. I want to thank the Keeny family so much for being a part of it. To us, we're all family. So thank you, we love you, and I'm going to turn it over to the winningest coach in North Carolina right now.
It's quite an honor. I know a lot of you probably that knew me in high school are sitting there and they said, well, why is he here? I will say that the gentlemen that spoke prior to me were really good football players. I was not. I loved it. I respected those guys. Those guys inspired me as well, as well as the coach did. I wasn't that good. But what I did love is I loved what football did to me and my friends and this community. And one guy made that happen. I wasn't an impact player, but I was a team player. I loved it. The influence on my life, and I'll try to explain quickly here, is really profound. I just retired about 4 years ago. My son took my job, my coaching job, and he told me before I left, he said, "Dad, don't forget, you influenced me, and I know influenced you." So, that being said, I got a couple of experiences like a couple of guys gave it, and I don't think any of them mention the exact experiences, and I'm going to tell them as I remember them. So some of you guys, if I got the dates wrong or the stats wrong, correct me. But it began for me, changed my life in the fall of '61. We all know now what happened prior to the fall of '61. Well, my dad wrote me or showed me, my brother and I who played, Mike played on that team, showed me an article from the North Penn Reporter. My mom grew up in Lansdale, so we got the North Penn Reporter, plus it covered Upper Perk sports. And if I remember right, it berated Upper Perk as being in the Bux-Mont League, that we should get out of the league. We were rinky-dinks, extra. I know Coach Keeny and the staff used that to fire the kids. And I was in 6th grade. I went to that ball game. My brother was there. I went with my parents. I don't remember much about the game. I might have been out in the back there behind the track playing with the guy. I don't know. I do know when I went home that night and I went to bed, a block off of Main Street, that the car horns in the band till 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, holy cow, what is this? That changed me right there. Really changed me. And I was a sophomore scrub, 140 pounds. I know coaches would look at me and say, well, look at your brother, what the heck happened? I don't know, but I loved it. I was a sophomore, and it was 2-a-days, and Mr. Schmidt had to be tackling Keith Kleinbach a couple times in the first couple practices, and it ain't working out. So one morning, about the 3rd or 4th day in, I begged my mom. I said, I knew we had rotation drill that morning. I said, Mom, I'm really sick. I got something, man. My dad had already left for work. 2-a-days. I begged her, call Mr. Keith, please tell him I just can't do it. And after a while, she did. I relented and I relented and I whined, and she did. So I got my sleep, and of course, feeling a little guilty, I waltzed into that locker room that evening for practice. There's a guy standing there waiting for me. Grabbed me by the arm, pulled me into the office, kicked the door closed. He said, don't you ever have your mother call me. You're a young man now, and don't you ever miss another football practice. And I didn't. That really changed my life. You know why? He cared about me, the absolute worst player on that football team, and he cared about me. Whew. The other thing was, when I did get into older and was developing enough to at least get on the field once in a while and play, I noticed that, as all these guys had said, is Upper Perk is beating people that have bigger squads. They're not a little rural community like the North Penn Reporter. We're a little rural community. But we were beating, were we beating these teams? And I'd look at how fast those guys were, and they had more guys on the team, and they had fancier uniforms sometimes. And we would win the game. And when I started playing a little bit, I figured out that we practiced harder than they did. We were taught better techniques and the latest techniques, and the coaches had the best, like Steve said, we passed the football. We did those things. This wasn't God-given talent that was coming off that field winning. This was coaching, y'all. I'm from the South now. It was coaching. There's no question about it, and that stuck with me. I went to college. I followed Fran out there. I was a best average player, and I said, but I love football so much, I just want to go to college. I want to go to college. I want to play football. I don't care about college. I want to play football. And because I hadn't done, that well in school, because school didn't really turn me on. I had to go to school because I had to go to practice. If I didn't go to practice, I didn't play. So, so I got in. I got a chance. I went to Northwest Missouri State. And I'm looking around the first couple of days, with no contact drill. We're all yucking it up, and I'm looking around. I'm standing in line in these lineman drills. I was a lineman. I'm going like this. I'm scared to death. I'm going to get killed. Well, when contact started, I held my own. I went into my room after that practice. I said, I'm still here. And I know why, because I was prepared. Prepared. And if they can prepare me, I can prepare kids too. So I determined the rest of my life that I was going to work with kids like coaches work with us. And I was so fortunate to have a career that I could support my family and make a living, coaching football, something I loved. I didn't hate getting up for work. I liked going to work, and it's hard to believe, isn't it? I liked going to work for 40-some years. I loved it. And I owe that to Coach Bill Keeny and his staff. I don't know how else to say it, y'all. I'm eternally grateful for how it changed my life, and I know many other people's lives. Thank you.
We're now moving on to the Kutztown University's perspective. Denard Brown was supposed to be here this evening or this afternoon, and he had a family emergency, so Denard can't be here. I do want to read a few excerpts from his biography. Denard coached at the collegiate professional level over the past 20 years, earned a bachelor's and master's degree from Kutztown, was an All-American tackle at Kutztown, and was inducted into their Hall of Fame in 2009. Denard's professional career began in 1998, signing as a free agent for the Washington Redskins. He played defensive tackle for NFL Europe Frankfurt Galaxy, the 1989 World Bowl champions. He then returned to the NFL as a defensive tackle with the Seattle Seahawks. Denard, who was coached for the Cleveland Browns and Miami Dolphins, helped lead Blinn Junior College to a national championship. Denard has also been the head coach in the German National Football League. So we're sorry that Denard couldn't be here today. We're going to continue with a Kutztown perspective. It means a lot to me, my sister, my brother, our daughter, all graduated from Kutztown, and when I left Upper Perk, I went up there as a professor at Kutztown. So we have close ties with Kutztown, but not nearly as close ties as the next speaker. When we found out Denard at the last minute couldn't speak, we went out to another Kutztown family member, Shirley Keeny. She graduated from Kutztown. David and drawing a blank here. Sarah's dad, Biz, and Lynn all graduated from Kutztown. And of course, Dave coached there and Bill coached at Kutztown. And I had the honor of working with Shirley for many years in the school district, and she's a Kutztown graduate. So I couldn't think of anybody better able to give a Kutztown perspective and give a meaningful talk to us. Shirley, so glad you could come in and pinch hit. Thank you very much, Shirley.
I thought I was speaking last, but I just found out now I'm not, so just bear with me. I just was going to say to you that if I was the last speaker, if Bill was up here, this program would go on about 45 minutes longer. But since it's me speaking, that's not going to happen. I just want to say this about Bill. To me, he was a natural leader. He was a natural-born leader. I believe God's gift to him was leadership. At Muhlenberg, he was inducted into the ODK Leadership Fraternity. That's the Omicron Delta Kappa. We needed the community to turn the program around. We needed all the community support that we could get. He knew how to do what he wanted to do, but it was just a complete effort of everybody. We were from Pottsville. Pottsville was a first-class program. We graduated in 1953. Bill, Vince Bircher, the band director, and I were in the same class. At Pottsville, we had a beautiful stadium. There's a stone press box. It was a WPA project built during the Depression years. Football was king there. During football season, every Monday morning, there was an assembly. We sat and watched the Friday night football game. That was narrated by the head coach. Imagine that today. After we moved here in 1960, after the first season, Bill and I sat at the dining room table on McCovey Street, and we wondered, did we do the right thing moving here? After a disastrous season, Bill was never used to losing, but it was a disastrous scene. But I think he was drawn by his pride. He knew how to get the job done, but we knew we had to have community cooperation. After the first season, I remember one evening, we had visitors from the community who wanted to help out. Harold Romike, Ernie Bauman, Bob Walker, even Doc Baver on the school board. He was interested in helping us too. In addition, we had help from the Football Booster Club, Wally Whitman and Ralph Engel. They wanted to do their part to make the season better for us. The first year, and you heard this before from Steve Moyer, was our real embarrassment was the 71-6 game at CB West. I didn't go to the away games. I had David. He was just born in 1960, and he came home from the game, and I said, well, how did it go? I was optimistic too. Well, he said, we lost 71-6. And as Steve told you, they announced that the rinky-dinks should come out to report on the field. But Bill's focus was not just on football. What he found when he came to Upper Perk was the lack of pride. The kids just graduated. There was just no, they went through the 4 years, they graduated, they lacked pride. Graduation was held at New Goshenhoppen Park, and he was concerned about the girls in heels tripping over the tree roots. The flowers that were there, they were just vases of flowers that people just brought in. There was just no class at all, and we weren't used to that coming from Pottsville. So he worked to get graduation at the Upper Perkiomen High School because he believed that's where graduation should take place. Along with the pride that things that make you proud, the first year when we were at Souderton, we had players in ripped jerseys. They didn't take care of the equipment. They didn't wash the equipment. There was just so much to overcome, but he was determined that he was going to do it. The assistant coaches, they performed above and beyond their coaching responsibilities. They know the things that they did. They weren't all just coaching things. They were loyal and they were hardworking. You also heard about this, the 1963 championship game with East Greenville. 5 a.m., people are lining up to get in. Willie Eschbach, Eddie Kleinbach, they hauled in temporary bleachers for the game. So there again was the use of the community and the help from them. The press box, the lumber for that was donated by the Kleinbach Lumber Yard. So we had just so much help. And who can forget Edmund Coons? We had the greatest, most beautiful field in the Bux-Mont. We were so proud of it. Finally, we got to get all the games filmed. When we first were here, I think they did 2, maybe 3 at the most. And I think the Booster Club helped us support that so that we could get the games filled, because in Pottsville, the games were all filmed. But we didn't have the championship game with Souderton. We didn't get that till years later, when someone from Upper Perkiomen who worked there as a teacher helped us to get a copy of that championship game. After games were over on a Saturday night, Bill and I would go to Allentown. The films had to be developed after we got them. We would go there, we would sit and wait until they were developed, and then we would come home. Then Bill would go down to the basement and he'd start looking at the film because he had a Sunday meeting with coaches and he had to be prepared for that. To promote the program, he had a night with the Indians at one time to get the community enthused about the football team. And on Wednesday nights, he showed films in the Upper Perkiomen Odeon. He always wanted to get more people interested. I could go on with more stories. My whole purpose in speaking today was, number one, thank all his ball players who gave their best every game. Number two, thank his loyal assistants. They did a terrific job. And they stayed with him all of the time that he coached. To stress that it was a community effort to turn the program around. And finally, coming from Pottsville, a first-class program, he knew how to get the job done, and he did it his way. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. That was remarkable. Spoken from the heart. Just priceless, Shirley. Thank you again. I mean, there's a pitch hitter who hit 1,000, that's for sure. And to think we might have missed that talk. Wow. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Shirley and Bill's granddaughter, Sarah Keeny, who's up at Kutztown, setting all kinds of softball records. She's a Division II All-American. She's up for Division II Player of the Year. Her batting average was .517. When she came to bat, they had someone on second base immediately. She bunted and stole second. So they started out this second hitter with someone on second. So remarkable career. She's also an academic All-American, Sarah. So just wanted to mention that. We're very proud of Sarah. Our next speaker is the coaching colleague, Jim Mick. Jim is a graduate of East Stroudsburg University and taught at St. Pius for 49 years. He served as football coach for 26 years and was the athletic director for 28 years. His record was 160, 85, and 11 with 4 championships, and the St. Pius Stadium was named after him. Jim served as assistant football coach at Kutztown University for 10 years. He has been honored by the following halls of fame: Notre Dame High School, Pope John Paul High School, Montgomery County Coaches Hall of Fame, and the Pennsylvania Football Coaches Hall of Fame. Please welcome Jim Mick.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about a good friend in Bill. When Shirley finished down there, Dave leaned over to me and says, "Boy, you got big shoes to fill." And how true that is, Shirley. It is tough. When Dave Keeny called me on the phone in April and told me that his father had passed away, I did not think of Bill Keeny as a football coach. I thought of Bill Keeny about his life and what he was like as a man. Bill was a doer and a giver, not a receiver or a taker. Bill was first of all about his family, and secondly, he was a great teacher of anything he tried to teach. And football was one of those lessons that he did teach for all those years. Our schools, Pius and Upper Perk, were very close in proximity back in the 60s. but Bill and I never competed against each other. Bill was in the Bux-Mont, and most of my career we played in the Chessmont. The one thing that we did have in common, though, that we were both small schools, actually tiny schools, playing against the big guys. North Penn, CB West, Downingtown, Coatesville. And during our times together, our free times together, we often talked to each other about the challenge of coaching in a small school and having to compete against the big guys. We weren't afraid of it. We took it. We took the challenge, and we met the challenge so many times. First met Bill in 1968. That, my friends, is 50 years ago. It doesn't seem that long. At the first Montgomery County All-Star Game. Played before 8,000 people in Norristown's Roosevelt Stadium. Bill was selected by the other coaches as the first head coach. I happened to be on the staff. And it didn't take me long to recognize the ability of Bill Keeny as a teacher. Well organized, passion and a love for the game, a teaching ability, organizational skills, and knowledge of the game. It was a great game in 1968. I think it was August, between the North and the South. And in total, Montgomery County, there was 34 schools, so we split up. So a lot of kids had the opportunity to participate. It was a great game. And we, the North, won it in the last quarter. And I always said to Bill, we won the game because we had Stevie Boyer at quarterback, Bill, and you were smart enough to pick Bill or Stevie as our quarterback. Bill, after 1980, went to Kutztown to be with George Baldwin as his offensive coordinator. George told me many times how he depended on Bill for his organizational skills, for his knowledge of the wing tee. He was a great recruiter because we all know he loved to talk. And he, at that time, Andre Reed was one of the first of two or three that Bill coached that went into the National Football League, and Andre Reed. Bill left about 1986. I stayed till George, till he retired in about 1987. We both got out, and then the phone rang from Al Leonzi back in 1993. We were reunited. And Bill, for the first time in his career, was going to do a lot of coaching on defense. So Al Leonzi said that Bill was going to be the linebacker coach and I was going to be the secondary coach. And then he added, but there's going to be two more Keenys. I said, you're kidding. 2 more? Oh boy, that should be something. So Dave came, Biz came, we had Fred Conrad. And one of the things that Bill and I did enjoy over the course of the years was arguing with Dave when Dave became the head coach. We had some great arguments because we had differences of opinion. Bill and I both being from the old school and Dave from the new school. But they were great times at Kutztown, met a lot of good people, and it was always a pleasure to be around Bill and work with him. The first couple of years were very difficult. We didn't win much, but we worked hard at it. Both Bill and I were 52 defensive coaches. And with the spread formations and everything, the passing game, we knew we had to change from the 52 and go to the 4-3. So we spent a lot of time on film talking to people who knew the 4-3, and we put together our own package. And in 1995, our success on defense was very noticeable. We gave up 11 points per game, which is outstanding. And we were ranked defensively in the top 25 in Division II. We had players like Denault Brown and Terry Owens. And Bill had Jerry Lucas and Todd Ayers and naturally John Mobley at linebacker. And then John became the second person that Bill coached, now on defense, that went to the Denver Broncos of the National Football League. What are the qualities of a good head coach, or even a great head coach? Bill emulated many of the things that I'm going to mention. His leadership. As the head coach at Upper Perk, he led by example and took ultimate responsibility for the program. And I know in the years that we would sit down and chat, he talked many times about the loyalty of the assistant coaches that he had here at Upper Perkiomen. Bill was a communicator, and he liked to talk. Excuse me, he loved to talk. And many times when we would go into position meetings at Kutztown, Bill would be going on 45 minutes after we were finished. I was, what are you talking about? Well, he always had something to talk about, and it always made sense. His dedication to Upper Perk here for all the years that he was here, and I know he was even the AD for a while, and an administrator. And when he was coaching, whether it be Upper Perk or Kutztown University, you got all of Bill Keeny. Your patience. As he got older, he got more patience. And we were good together because he had a lot of patience and I had none. He was competitive. He respected all, but he feared none. And he was a teacher, and that's what you got to remember. In this game of football, you better be a teacher of the game if you're going to be successful. And then the second thing you better have, and maybe even the first, you better have players that can play and players that can win. And Bill knew that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention you, Shirley, because Bill mentioned you many times, how loyal you were to him, and how much time you gave to him to do what he loved to do. But there was one time in your marriage where Shirley was saying that, you know, Bill's spending a lot of time at this football thing. I think I may have to sit down and talk to him. So she called Bill in, and they sat down and had a talk. And at the end of the talk, Shirley said to Bill, you know, Bill, I think you love football more than you love me. Bill said, I do, but I love you more than soccer and basketball. So, Bill, on behalf of your family and friends, I thank you. I salute you for your inquisitive mind, for your passion and commitment to teaching, for your generosity, for your moral leadership, for your patience and understanding, for your deep devotion to Shirley and your family, and for your undying belief of what is right. God rest.
Our next area is the teammate, Dick Werkheiser. Dick's an assistant football coach at Upper Perk for 18 years with coach. He played college football with coach at Muhlenberg College. Dick was a tight end and defensive end for 4 years and held a record for blocked punts and received statewide honors. As an end, I believe he blocked more punts than caught passes. Dick earned 13 letters in football, basketball, baseball, and track at Palmerton High School. He's a member of the Palmerton High School and Montgomery County Hall of Fame. He taught science at Upper Perkiomen High School and Upper Perkiomen Middle School. He also coached football and taught science at Perkiomen School. Dick was a very successful track coach at Upper Perkiomen High School, winning the state title and earning several district titles. Kevin Fox was a state champion in shot put under Dick Werkheiser. Please welcome the teammate, Dick Werkheiser.
Thank you, George, and welcome everyone this afternoon. It's up to me to tell the story of how Bill and I met the first time. We were scholar football candidates at Muhlenberg College in 1953. So I've known Bill since that point on various levels. And he reminded me at that beginning, that he's the quarterback, and the coaches will appreciate this. You're the tight end. And we played together. He started at quarterback his sophomore year, so we're talking about an 8-game schedule at Muhlenberg College at that time. So in 24 games, we never connected on a touchdown pass, except one Saturday evening. We were playing Lafayette College in J. Bernie Crum Stadium, which was our home site at that point. I finally caught a touchdown pass from Bill. We both celebrated, but lying on the grass in our backfield was a piece of cloth, and that canceled the only touchdown we ever connected on. Bill and I were both had enjoyed successful high school careers. I was part of the only undefeated Palmerton High School football team in the history of the school. And let me diverge a moment to commend the speakers and the gentlemen that have come up to this microphone that were graduated, played football at this institution, this school, and graduated and had successful college success. I thought that was sensational, guys. That was better than any game plan, any team we beat in our athletically. And let me also make a political statement. Isn't this ridiculous, all the comments you hear about injury in football and how there's this great risk, when I'm looking at these gentlemen saying, boy, it sure created a bad situation with you guys. Football, for some reason, and maybe it's those sweaty, hot August afternoon and morning sessions at practice. Maybe it's that glamour of dressing on Friday night, which used to be the thing to do in the Upper Perkiomen Valley, or Saturday afternoon in the school colors, or maybe it's the pleasure of showing up Thanksgiving morning in a wonderful contest. For whatever reason, it's been destroyed, banished from the program. A great group of guys, and the way they represented Coach Keeny this afternoon. Bill and I, arriving at Muhlenberg together, we chatted a lot about football, of course. The dormitories weren't air conditioned. It was miserable in that place. The juniors and seniors on our roster, we being freshmen, of course, we had to gain respectability with those guys, which wasn't pleasurable. Socially and verbally, we had to make some kind of contact and impress them. Well, both of us, as I said, I started playing as a starter at Muhlenberg my freshman year, and Bill came along as a starting quarterback his sophomore year. We talked coaching football all the time, and off we went 4 years later in graduation. And I thought all along, I got to mention this to Shirley Keeny. Do you remember that morning outdoors on the campus of Muhlenberg when we graduated, and both of us were in denim powder blue suits, which are still very popular today? And both, I looked at Bill, I said, man, that's not you. And quite a coincidence. We also, incidentally, were born 3 days apart, myself in Palmerton, PA, and Bill in Pottsville. We linked on a lot of occasions, except my affection for jazz music. And I had a record player, and I played it in my dormitory room, and Bill's room was just a couple of strides down the hall, and he could never understand improvisation. And people like Dave Brubeck, my goodness, we had him on campus, Bill, and I remember Bill walking out on that concert. The great Dave Brubeck, a real champion in jazz music. Well, anyway, we went 4 years later. Bill took short periods of coaching and teaching in Bethlehem, I believe, and in Pottsville. I started out in a place called Summit Hill as the only science teacher on the faculty, and also at Shillington. And that's about the time my sister, and I grew up in a family of 4 sisters, was teaching at Pennsburg Elementary School, which is today nothing but a bunch of apartments on Main Street. She told me that this place, Upper Perkiomen, was going to create new individuals in the football program. Why don't you apply? Well, now I had 3 years experience in education and coaching, and I applied. Bill, at the same time, and I've told this story several times, Bill was off serving a National Guard responsibility in Missouri, some camp down there, and I told him about this vacancy that my sister had told me about, and he applied. Well, he was the quarterback, and I was the end. I lost the challenge. I wound up, but he did act in a very complimentary fashion. After all, I was his job hunting agent because I told him about this vacancy, and he convinced the school board back in 1960 to hire me as the 9th grade coach and a biology teacher. And I did want to mention that too. Both of us arrived at Muhlenberg as chemistry majors. You know, boy, did we find out in a hurry we didn't belong there. Of course, Bill wound up in history. I took the easy route and I became a biology major. And, but we stayed in contact professionally in our jobs and got together at Upper Perk in 1960. So my sister and myself were responsible for getting Bill and Shirley to come to Upper Perkiomen. And I moved down here a year later in 1961. And here, how many years ago is that now? From 1953 to 2018. So I've known Bill, almost 75 years. And we fought the battles all the time. I wanted to throw the football. He wanted to run it. Back and forth we went. And that's the story of how we both here in 2018, we were both still living in this wonderful valley. Thank you very much.
I had the good fortune to spend 12 years at Muhlenberg College after I left Upper Perk. Princeton Review called Muhlenberg College the friendliest college campus in the nation, and it was. It was just a blessing for me to spend that time at Muhlenberg, and I know Dick and Coach enjoyed their tenure up there also. Our next topic, the coach's son, Dave Keeny. Dave, a 1978 graduate Upper Perk, was a 4-sport athlete, an outstanding running back, and earned the most valuable player award in football as a senior. He was an all-conference running back and a PSAC scholar athlete at Kutztown University. Dave was a graduate assistant under Coach George Welsh, University of Virginia, and a graduate assistant quarterback coach for Penn State's Joe Paterno, where he coached at the National Championship Fiesta Bowl and the Citrus Bowl. Dave has coached in 5 nationally ranked programs with 2 unbeaten seasons. In his 13 years at Kutztown, he took a lowly rated program. Now, I could describe, it sounds like father and son, a lowly rated program. When he got to Kutztown, they were rated with Cheney and Mansfield at the bottom of the heap. Cheney and Mansfield no longer have D2 football programs, but Kutztown has an excellent program now, and Dave got them back on track. He developed a nationally ranked program that clearly raised the institutional profile and competitive respectability. His new mark for wins in the season, he had 7 wins, which was the most ever at Kutztown in his career, and his overall record at the time were the best in Kutztown University history. Welcome, Dave Keeny.
First and foremost, my dad was a teacher and leader to his children, grandchildren, players, students, his tax clients, and anyone who would listen. Education was very important to him. He was very interested in players having an opportunity to pursue their education in college, and equally as important, being able to place them at schools where they would have an opportunity to play. Myself, I had a multifaceted, unique relationship with my dad. I was a son, I was his manager, I was a player for him, and a coaching colleague. And so I hope to share those parts with you this afternoon. Part one, lessons learned as a son in family life. He and my mother, and I have to give her credit as well, created an incredible positive environment in the household. A tremendous can-do attitude. We were always encouraged. We were always on the path to success and winning, no matter what our circumstance was. We were always told, just keep working at it. In our household, you never failed. You just had to keep persevering and you would be successful. That was a tremendous gift to all of his children. Now, one good thing in the household for my mother was that she never had to worry about any injuries. There were never any injuries unless you had broken bones. So if you fell down, no matter if you cut yourself, you were hurt, what have you, you were always told, get up, you're okay. It even applied to my sister. We always had the dreaded Saturday morning garage cleaning, where we were instructed on our assignments like we were his players, which we didn't always love. Unless, of course, somebody called and said, hey, the gym's gonna be open today at 11 o'clock. Can you come here and play basketball? Then the cleaning stopped. And he would say, well, we can always get to this tomorrow or next week. I don't recall many times when we ever got back to it. There was also the infamous family vacation fishing trip to Maine, where the first couple of days he would ask all of us in the boat, where would you guys like to fish? And of course we would say, well, why don't we fish over here? And he would look and he'd say, no, I think we should go over here. Well, that lasted for a couple of days. And then we began to realize that every morning that we suggested where we wanted to fish, he would go in the opposite direction. So by the time the week was over, it became a kind of a family joke that, you know, we would suggest where we wanted to fish, and then he would tell us where we were going to fish. But we were raised in the family on mantras. Just because everybody else does it doesn't make it right. Stand up for what you believe in. Be a leader, not a follower. Nobody ever drowned in sweat. You don't play on potential, you play on performance. And the KISS system. Keep it simple, stupid. He also at that time recommended 2 books to me that he highly encouraged me to read. One was The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, and another classic at that time, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Part 2, The Manager. I spent 7 seasons as his manager for his football team from ages 8 to 15. During those times, we would get up, say around 6:30 in the morning. We'd step outside of the house, and it always seemed like there was this overcast and a little bit misty and kind of mornings. And as the players would remember, by the time we got to the middle of practice, the sun was out, and it always seemed like August 18th was the hottest time of the summer, the start of August practice. We were always the first to arrive and the last to leave. I was very blessed to have, at that time, I believe I only missed one August practice day, and I realized that I had spent 138 practices, 14 scrimmages, 70-plus games, countless Friday and Saturday night scouting trips, and weekday fall practices when I would come home from school and my mother would drive me down to practice with him. Upper Perk football became my life. I had a front row seat. I saw the discipline, the pride, and the toughness instilled on the practice field. I watched all the players, Upper Perkiomen players that were heroes of mine. I got a chance to see all the great opponents. During the decade of the 70s, opponents we played, there were 11 players from opponent schools that went on to play pro football. I got to meet all the coaches. I got an opportunity to see our assistant coaches, Coach Werkheiser, who brought a cerebral approach to receiver play, taught us how to get open, the difference between man and zone coverage. Coach Slemmer, a technician in secondary play, teaching us how to take the proper angles to get to the middle of our zones. Coach Duca, an excellent teacher of backfield fundamentals. He stressed the importance of durability as it related to being a good football player. And then there was Coach Schmidt, who added the toughness to the program. And quite honestly, everybody was scared of him. Part 3, the player. All who played for him knew there was only one way. It was going to be his way and his standard of performance. There was only one way to practice. That was full speed, and you had to do it right. All competitors know that the pressure to perform and be successful is largely self-induced. As a coach's son, I knew there would be additional pressure. I just didn't really know what to expect. I learned very quickly during my sophomore year when I went out onto the field and I got booed in our home stadium. Mike Pettin, the coach of Central Bucks West, was there that day and later told me that it really helped him in understanding what it was going to be like for him to coach his son. Every minute on the field, though, with the exception of one moment, he was my coach, not my dad. And he was going to send a message to the rest of the team through me. For example, every year on the Wednesday practice schedule in the afternoon, we had a drill called one-on-one, which some people call today the Oklahoma drill. One-on-one involved a blocker and a defender and a ball carrier. And the object was to block the defender, and then the defender was trying to get off the block and make a tackle on the ball carrier. I was a 135-pound sophomore. And usually in the one-on-one drill, as a coach, you try and match up the kids with their size and ability. Well, he decided that day that I was going to block somebody that was 190 pounds. And in my 3 attempts, I didn't block him on any one of the attempts, which then gave him the opportunity to scream at me. But the message was clear. It doesn't matter what size you are or what position you play. It was about you find a way to get it done. There was one time as I got through my sophomore year, some of you that are here today remember it. It was a daily basis of coaching, giving me the special attention, I guess. But I reached a point in about halfway through my junior year where the pressure of trying to be successful and all the pride that had been developed in Upper Perk football and just trying to, be successful and not let your dad down, all those kind of things reached a head. And I walked away from a drill that Coach Slemmer and Coach Duca had. And by the time I got over to him, who was standing a little bit away from the drill, I had tears in my eyes because I had just reached a point where it was just very difficult. And he put his arm around me and he said, hey, everything is going to be fine. You're going to be all right. Fortunately, that Friday, I was fortunate to have a very good game down at North Penn, and things started to change a little bit. However, not for long. Right before halftime of the Thanksgiving Day game, I was back to catch a punt, and he was a stickler for making sure you catch the punts, don't let it hit the ground and roll down the field. Unfortunately, I made a decision right before half where we would probably only have one play to run anyway, but I made a decision that I didn't think I could run up and catch the ball, and I started to run up and I let the ball hit the ground. Well, the ball, I think, hit the ground on about the 35-yard line and rolled back to our 15. Now, we still had one play to run, but as I glanced over on the sideline, I could see he was livid. I mean, he was as angry as he could be on the sideline for me letting the ball hit the ground. So I figured, well, okay, we still have a play to run. I'm going to be safe at least for a play. So we ran the play. I don't think I took more than 5 steps toward the locker room. And if you guys remember the old Solderton Stadium, you had to walk the field, you had to go out that gate, and then you had to walk. It was about a 150-yard walk back to the locker room. Well, he proceeded in that 150 yards. I took 5 steps, and he was right there beside me, and he was yelling at me for that entire 150-yard walk by my side. So I am thinking, well, if I get to the locker room, I'll be okay, because now he's got to meet with the coaches. And well, he proceeded to take the first part of the halftime and continued to try and make his point with me. But later, I really appreciated it, and I realized it was really all about making people perform to the very best of their ability. And that's one of the greatest gifts in coaching and in society that we can give to people. Many players who were here, and I believe I heard Steve Moyer talk about it earlier, I think if you talk to many Upper Perkiomen players who went on to play college football, they realized that they were better coached, better prepared, and in part because they knew how to practice full speed. That every practice, every play was to be practiced like you were playing in a game. Part 4, the coach. He believed in multi-sport athletes. He was a great teacher because he understood how to teach in a progression. He was smart, and he was an excellent evaluator of players and where they should play. He was innovative. He didn't just copy what everybody else did. He did what was best for Upper Perk. And I think that was a secret ingredient to success here. During the decade of the 70s, we beat North Penn High School, a school 4 times our size, 8 out of 10 years. Because ultimately, we did what was best for Upper Perk football. In 1961, he was stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana, and he had an opportunity to go visit the LSU spring football practice. LSU had just won the national championship in 1958. They were coached by Paul Dietzel, who was an organizer, and Paul Dietzel was the originator of platoon football. Up until that point, most people just played offense and defense, but he developed a 3-platoon system at LSU and was a great organizer in practice scheduling. My dad brought that information back to Upper Perkiomen. Later, George Welsh, who at the time was an assistant at Penn State, and later my boss at the University of Virginia and College Football Hall of Fame coach, would watch our practices and said to my dad, these are the most organized high school practices he saw. And George recruited southeastern Pennsylvania and South Jersey. I think my dad had 2 great strengths. One was the ability to communicate, and even at 75 years old, coaching for my brother, working with kids, he still was a great communicator to kids. But I think the one thing that really stands out to me, and when I evaluate his coaching, he had the ability to get people to believe they can be better than they were, and to drive them to be their best. Later on, as he mellowed, as Coach Mick said, he used the term, we have to coach up. But we always believed, as players at Upper Perkiomen, that we always could win on Saturday afternoons. Part 5, the finale. On April 14th, the morning of his passing, there was a knock on my door at 6:30. It was my mother, and I knew it wasn't going to be good, informing me that he had passed at 4:30 in the morning. As we gathered ourselves to pay our last respects, I stepped outside the house, and it was a warm, overcast morning with a little bit of mist. It was the same weather that I had known getting up and sharing with him for so many years. I knew then I had come full circle. His spirit, positive attitude, and guiding principles will endure through the generations. On behalf of our family, we are grateful for all who came today, whose lives he touched. Just know that you touched his as well. From humble beginnings in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, to the success that he achieved in his life, I think the great poet Robert Frost, in his poem, The Road Not Taken, said it the best, that I think reflects his philosophy and his life, and that is, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you.
Very moving tribute to Coach. Again, I want to thank all of you for coming out today. The celebration of life will continue at the PC Pub afterwards, but I have a few announcements before that. We owe thanks to many people for helping out today. Dr. Andrea Farina, the acting superintendent of the school district, Mr. John Sheeran, and Doug Kenwood, the directors of the facilities and operations. John is retiring this month, and Doug just started over position. Dr. Mark Thomas, stage crew advisor, and Scott Rowland helped with the video, and Jeff Caron for his custodial services. Please give those people a round of applause. Again, I want to thank you for coming out today. This was a most meaningful, remarkable event. I just hope that you'll follow through. I have a couple of requests. First, the video, if you look up Bill Keeny's Celebration of Life, that video will be available, Bill Keeny's Celebration of Life. And also, there was a petition out there to sign to have the football stadium named the Coach Keeny Stadium. I hope everybody signed it, and I hope they contact at least 3 other people to sign it so we can get going on giving this stadium its proper name. Thank you very much.